We begin tonight with a question that will hopefully pierce through all the noise about tomorrow's presidential debate. And that question is, will this debate actually matter? Now, of course, a debate as a concept matters and matters deeply. A democracy depends on candidates being able to pitch their policies as well as personalities and their vision for the country. That would be a normal part of a normal election season consisting of candidates who you may not agree with or even like, but who would present themselves in a professional, civil way, as they have done since the beginning of elections in this country. But that's not what we have right now. Instead, we have a normal president and a former president who is poised to be his party's nominee again, who rants and rambles and lies, who is a 34-count felon and a coup plotter, who tried to steal an election and admires dictators, who vows vengeance and brags that he'll be a dictator, and who has zero respect for the debate stage, for democracy, for half the population, meaning women or immigrants or black and brown Americans, but lots of seeming respect for Adolf Hitler. And so we are forcing a deeply unserious person into a serious situation, because this is how we've always done it, right? But guess what? The normal formula doesn't work for someone like Trump. So we don't get debates anymore. We have dumpster fires, which is exactly how the Lincoln Project portrayed Trump's so-called debate prep in their latest ad.
Unemployment is 98% under Joe Biden.
Best debate prep since Lincoln.
And a loaf of gasoline is $84 a pound.
What about schools, sir?
Let them eat bootstraps, okay? Because schools want to do the guillotine. And that's why they scheduled the Shark Week during my campaign. It's election interference. And they say, oh, the sharks. They don't know what they're biting. They're confused. Oh, I'm a hammerhead. I'm so confused. And everyone looks like a nail. Off with their head. And what, you think Sharknado happens in a vacuum? Give me a break.
You're in the zone, master.
Okay, that is objectively funny. I would watch that show. I would. But the Lincoln Project is making a good point, which brings us back to our question. How can this debate matter when Donald Trump, a convicted felon and adjudicated rapist, is also absurd? What does matter, of course, is democracy. We're not saying that you shouldn't be paying attention. Donald Trump is dangerous, and he isn't hiding what he intends to do in a second term. His team's Project 2025 is a real thing and a real threat to all Americans. It is a blueprint for his presidency, should he win in November, that offers a chilling roadmap for the subversion of checks and balances, the creation of a new authoritarian presidential powers, and efforts to Christianize the federal government. But this debate, what type of impact will it have in the end? Even the MAGA minions are trying to lower expectations after months of going after President Biden's mental acuity. In fact, the expectation setting from the Republican side is really something. Take a listen.
Trump's team should not underestimate Joe Biden and his team's ability to whether they're going to jack him up on Mountain Dew or whatever it is.
Of course, no one expects that Joe Biden would be on cocaine, but they do ask questions, and I think they're objectively. I think it makes sense why people are asking, will he be on some sort of energy drinks or something? Okay, look, his energy levels, you can see, vary depending on what format he's in and what forum.
Okay, what? But if this dig on a low-energy candidate hopped up on Coke and Mountain Dew sounds familiar, it's because it is literally the same attack that Trump hurled at his previous opponent, Hillary Clinton, back in 2016.
I think she's actually getting pumped up. If you want to know the truth, she's getting pumped up. You understand? In fact, we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. She's getting pumped up for Wednesday night.
He never has any new material. And this is what Trump is saying about his opponent, President Biden, now.
Is anybody going to watch the debate? He's going to be so pumped up. He's going to be pumped up.
Okay, the truth is, the only candidate who sounds manic is Donald Trump. It is impossible to debate him, and it is arguably a waste of time. He interrupts, he bullies, he stalks and acts creepy, and then says the white supremacy part out loud with a bullhorn. And he's also a diminished figure since the last time he ran for president. Case in point, Trump had a really rough night in yesterday's primaries, with a trio of his endorsed candidates losing to Republican rivals in South Carolina, Colorado, and Utah. Trump's endorsement is not the precious it once was. meaning Trump is heading into a debate when the party is not entirely unified behind him. That much is clear. I mean, are we entirely sure he will even show up? This is our political reality, where we have to question whether the presumptive Republican nominee will even be on stage. So again, I ask, will this debate matter? Joining me now is Rick Wilson, co-founder of the aforementioned Lincoln Project and host of the Enemies List podcast, and Jennifer Palmieri, former White House communications director in the Obama administration, MSNBC political analyst, and co-host of the MSNBC podcast, How to Win 2024. Ladies first, Jennifer, and because you are the Obama campaign veteran,
And
you've seen a lot,
Hillary.
and Hillary Clinton, right? We're going to talk a little bit about her debates with him. Does it's summer. People are like taking their kids to camp and stuff. It's very early. Will this debate in the end matter? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think it's going to matter a lot because it's the first time what the Biden team has really been trying to do is show everyone the visual of it. These are your two choices. You may not be happy about it, but these are in fact your two choices. A lot of people still think it's going to be somebody other than Biden and Trump. And to get him on stage, this time without an audience, where he can say, he's the one responsible for the Trump abortion bans. He's the one that will not accept. He's the one responsible for Jan 6. He's the one that won't accept democratic outcomes, like he won't accept that his trial, a fair trial, that he won't accept that democratic outcome. And he can say you can have the digital moments where you can, cut, edit from that of everything that he's accomplished, right? And so it's it's a reset.
It's like content.
It's a content reset, and that's really important for Democrats because it's so hard to break through, and you want to do that early.
So the things that are going to happen right after Donald Trump is going to get sentenced in July. There's his convention, which starts July 15th, July 18th, like right a few days after he gets sentenced, and we don't know. Maybe he'll have an ankle bracelet on. I don't know. Who knows? Right? Maybe we don't know what will happen then. Then the Democratic convention is in August. This debate happens. What do you think is the immediate result coming at it from somebody who's a veteran of the other side? Or maybe they'll just play your cartoon.
They might. You never
Which
know.
I would watch.
Which, listen, we may spend that out wider. But look, Joy, what we've got here is a debate where you've got a rational actor in Joe Biden, you've got a normal person, as you pointed out, and Donald Trump. In every debate he's ever been in, has been used to eating up all the scenery and having this dramatic presence on the stage and lurking over Hillary Clinton or calling Jeb low energy or throwing insults all over the place. This debate is formalized and structured. So it's going to be hard for him to come out of this. First off, they've said for weeks, Joe Biden is senile. He's got dementia. He can barely walk or talk. And Biden, as he shows up at the State of the Union addresses, Correspondence Center, NATO speeches, big things, Biden does a good performance. If he goes in there and just doesn't drool on himself, Donald Trump loses the debate.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to spin this after as a great triumph of Trump's rhetoric, but we know what's going to happen. He can't control himself. He goes off on his weird stories about sharks and batteries and refrigerators and washing machines, and he's going to look like it's going to remind people that the instability and the craziness they sort of wanted to forget about is the only choice if you're going to vote Republican. He is going to be, I think, in a very tight situation trying to spin this after. It's just not going to work.
Let's play a couple of montages just to remind people, because I think there is sort of an amnesia effect with Trump, is that people forget how weird he is. So here he is debating in the campaign you worked on, Hillary Clinton. Here's a little bit of that.
My Social Security payroll contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund, try to get those costs down. But here's what I don't want people to forget when we're talking about reining in the costs, which has to be the highest priority of the next president. That's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians.
God, bad memories. I'm having flashbacks to 2016. I mean, the thing is, objectively, I watched all those debates in real time.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton won all those debates. She mopped the floor with him. Even like the moderator beat Donald Trump in the debates. Like he just was so weird and glooming over her and creepy. In the end, he still won.
Right, but that doesn't mean that debates don't matter, right? I mean, I think they matter a lot, and they really matter to Democrats because it's so hard to break through. It's so hard to hold him accountable at all. And like Biden can't, but this is your only opportunity to really do that. And Biden can't go on stage worried about like what's he gonna do, because I think the fact that there's not an audience is to Biden's benefit. But it may mean that Trump is more disciplined than he normally is because
there's no one to play to.
There's nothing to feed off. There's no one to play to. Like Dana Bash and Jake Tapper are not going to be amused.
Right. Yes. They will not laugh along.
They're going to look at him quizzically when he goes on about sharks. So that may not happen. So I think Biden has to say, like, okay, this is my opportunity to say the things I know that the American people need to hear about abortion and Roe, about Jan 6, and then about the economic, the things that he has done to lower costs. That's like, he's got to go out thinking just that. And Biden is good. That first debate last year was, in 2020, that was a debacle.
Mm-hmm. Train wreck.
Train wreck. But Biden is good at the aside. Like he can just throw it right back at Trump.
I have a little clip of it. Let me play it. Well, this is a little montage of Trump debating Biden. Take a look.
Guess what? A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
So, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
I'm not going to answer the question.
Why wouldn't you answer that question?
The question is,
a lot of new Supreme Court justice, radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen,
that actually was my favorite line from the entire.
I bought it in a T-shirt. I actually got it in a T-shirt. Yeah.
How does give us some advice? You guys are great at trolling Donald Trump. I mean, it is really genius what you guys do with Lincoln Project. What should Biden do to troll him?
He should frame Trump. He should just say, Donald, you're not the same guy you were.
He should call him Donald. Can we stop for a moment?
Yes, 100%.
They are both. He calls Barack Obama Barack. President Obama. He calls him Barack because he's his friend, and they're both presidents.
Right.
So if he can call President Obama Barack because they have that stature equal, he should call him Donald, right?
He should call him Donald on the stage. It also bothers Trump dramatically. They call him Donald or Little Donald or Wee Donald. But which he should also point out, he should bring it up right up. He says, Donald, you are a failure. You failed. I've led a strong administration. We've been stronger on jobs, stronger on national defense, stronger on the border than you ever were. You were weak. You failed. You never did it, Donald. And when you got beaten last time, and we beat you and we'll beat you again, you launched an attack on the Capitol. And just drive hard on it. And it wouldn't surprise me, Donald, that you would do that because you're a criminal. You were a convicted criminal, a felon with 34 counts. And frankly, that's not who Americans want as a president. I just drive the convict thing right up his backside.
Spleen. All week, we have told you to keep an eye on the Democratic primary in New York's 16th congressional district, which covers parts of Westchester County and the Northeast Bronx. That is because the most expensive House primary, and not just this cycle, but in U.S. history, was underway to unseat Squad Congressman Jamal Bowman, one of the fiercest critics of Israel in Congress. Those efforts were successful yesterday, partly through the efforts of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, which not only invested $14.5 million to beat Bowman, but also recruited the winning candidate, moderate Westchester County Executive George Latimer. Bowman is now not only the first incumbent Democrat to lose a primary this election cycle, but also the first member of the House's Progressive Squad to be ousted from power since the group formed after the 2018 elections. Joining me now is Representative Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I do want to play, Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here. You were part of the group that spoke at the final sort of rally. I want to play a little bit of your comments that day. Do we have it? Oh, we don't have it. Okay, we don't have it. All right, so you were there and others spoke for Representative Bowman. So characterize for me, do you think this was an issue of some of the other issues he had, the fire alarm, the criticisms of some of his performance? Was it the redistricting? What do you think went into this loss, or was it the money?
Well, first, Joy, let me just begin by saying it has been an honor to serve alongside Jamal Bowman. He is someone who has dedicated his life to children, a middle school educator. He's been an effective legislator. He's a loving husband and father. And we have done great work alongside one another, whether it was about the baby formula shortage crisis, or clean drinking water, or safer schools, or mental health supports for our students. While I was on the ground, one of the moments that really touched my heart was the last day of school, and several teenagers came running up the block saying, "There's Jamal, there's Jamal." And and they wanted to take a selfie with him. So they knew who their congressman is. They knew who their champion was. And then as they were taking a selfie with him, someone else was riding by on a bike, and they said, love you, brother, and I get your birthday card every year. This is someone who has led with love and centered all the people from every walk of life. And his perspective and voice will certainly be missed next term. It is a collective loss for our Democratic caucus. It is also a loss for our Congressional Black Caucus and for our Congressional Progressive Caucus as well. I think this unprecedented sum of money, $20 million, we cannot allow special interests, dark money, super PACs to buy congressional seats. It is a threat to our democracy. When I was on the ground, I came in faith houses, with small businesses, at community events. People said, we are just so tired of these negative ads. At one restaurant, talking to voters, I was there for 30 minutes, and in that 30-minute span, 8 negative ads ran.
Mm-hmm. And we know that a lot of that money came from AIPAC-affiliated super PACs and others. Political reports that some of the things they did were getting people to switch parties from Republican to independent, a couple thousand people to switch parties to vote in the primary. We know that happened. And we just know there was just a ton, as you said, an avalanche of spending. But there was also a change in this district, right? Pre-redistricting, this district had a lot more of the Bronx in it, probably a lot of the people that you were talking with. Post-redistricting, it's really like almost all Westchester. So it's kind of, it's easy to read too much into what happened with Representative Bowman. But now we move on to other races. You are a target of this same organization and their super PACs. So is Cori Bush, who there's already a lot of bragging going on among some of the same people who defeated Mr. Bowman to say Cori Bush is next. She's running against a man who was recruited to run against her. He's a St. Louis prosecutor named Wesley Bell. He's a former campaign manager for a very conservative Republican who is an anti-abortion Republican. He's benefited from more than $300,000 in ads paid for by AIPAC. Even if we're overreading maybe a bit of what happened with Representative Bowman, is Cori Bush, are other progressives prepared for this to come your way? You have also a race coming up.
Let me just say this. You were speaking a moment ago about the Supreme Court, and I just want to take a moment to speak to how all of this is connected, because Citizens United is what has created this climate and allowed for this infusion of dark money, of special interest money, to come in and influence elections in this way. We have the very same mega donors, Leonard Leo and others, the same people who work to influence that decision for Citizen United are the same people behind Project 2025, this far-right manifesto, this policy plan and transition plan, are the same people who have sought to influence justices with lavish gifts and who want more justices like them to be seated. This is all connected. These special interest groups, dark money and super PACs, they support insurrectionists, 100 insurrectionists who are election deniers. They support dozens of extremist Republicans who want a national ban on abortion. And so this is a threat to our democracy. These Republican donors, although we don't have a full, autopsy on the donors into New York, I'm sorry,
Sure.
But the point is this: Cori Bush is a valued member of this Democratic caucus, a leader on repro rights, a leader on criminal legal reform. She is a valued member of this caucus. She has a strong grassroots campaign. She has a path to victory. And I'm not going to work, Joy, I'm going to work, but I want to be very clear. To be a Black woman in America and to be targeted is nothing new, especially by special interests and dark money and super PACs. It's a threat to our democracy, and it is a testament to the strength of this movement for peace, humanity, and justice that they would have to spend such an unprecedented and historic sum of money to defeat Jamal Bowman.
Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, an original member of the squad and member of the Progressive Caucus in the House. Thank you very much, Congresswoman.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more, September 7th in Brooklyn. MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.